Here we go. You'll get a little pop up.
Got
All
it.
right, and we're gonna jump in and welcome you. Ready?
Yeah.
Hi,
Awesome.
Lindz.
Hey, Lindz.
Hello, hello.
Hi.
It's so wonderful to have you here, Lindz. And we know also that your sound is going to be beautiful because Lindz has their own beautiful podcast recording studio setup, and they
Oh,
look very professional. Very.
Mm,
yes.
I try.
Yes. You're succeeding. And I
I'm
loved
glad.
the queer kid stuff
Yeah,
behind you
Yeah.
and your background. You
it's
win. That's a
yeah.
great background.
The whole business is there and shining, and that just kind of like leads us into what we're here to talk about and who Lindz is. So Lindz, without further ado, why don't we have you give us your 30-second elevator pitch? Who are you and why are you here talking to these ovaries right now?
For sure. Let's do it. Hi, everyone. My name is Lindz Amer. I use they, them pronouns. I'm queer and trans, non binary, and I make queer stuff for kids and families. You probably know me best from my web series called Queer Kid Stuff that I started in 2016 and ran for 4 seasons, 50 episodes. 4 million views, been a wild ride. I also do a lot of other things. I perform at schools and libraries all over the country and virtually. I write for children's television and consult over there. I am an author, I'm a podcaster, and a whole lot of other stuff. I'm
Boom.
also a person with a lot of identities and who lives in the world that we all do. I'm not just some ephemeral creator, but yeah, that's me.
Oh my God, Lindz,
Awesome.
you just blew it out of the park. That was amazing. That was
Wow.
awesome. And just a little heads up, we have something in common. You write for TV shows. I
Hmm.
do voices for TV shows.
Ooh, I didn't know that you were a voiceover actor. That's wonderful.
Yes,
And I
yes,
act in TV shows. So there
yes.
you
Ooh,
go.
So we all
amazing.
yes.
I love
So
it.
we'll have to powwow. Well, maybe we create our own queer
Kid stuff
animated
thing.
kids show
You
with
know what? I'm working on it. I'm
I
trying to
know
make it
you are.
happen. So,
You're
Yeah.
you're doing all the good things. You are
All of
doing
them.
all the good things. So let's like take it to the beginning. You started with queer kid stuff. Can you talk
hmm
about like where that came from and what it is? And
Yeah,
it's super
totally.
successful. It's fucking amazing. And I for one love it as a queer mom. So take us through it.
Yeah, totally. So, I come from theater. That's kind of my undergraduate background, and yep, totally, same,
Same,
same.
same.
Yeah, and when I was an undergrad, I really fell in love with theater for young audiences and like children's storytelling.
Mhm.
I wasn't like I was like, I didn't totally understand my identity or my gender yet, but there was definitely something like queer about me. I wasn't like, a soprano ingenue, right? And so I
Right.
wasn't really getting cast and like I wanted to be in rehearsal rooms and all this stuff. So I fell into children's theater and I was also taking like queer theory classes at the same time. And I was looking at these like two kind of spaces that I was really falling into and leaning hard into and really loving. And I wondered why they couldn't talk to each other. And I kind of went into theater and I was like, where are all the queer
Right.
stories? Where are the queer
Mm.
characters? And they just really weren't there. There may be like a handful of
Yeah.
plays. Um,
Like
and
barely any, especially, and I'm from the
like
musical
two or
theater
three.
world,
Yeah.
right? And in the
Yeah.
musical theater world, most of like all of my guy friends from musical theater,
Hmm.
come on, we're all gay. They
Yeah.
were all, and there are no characters in musical theater to
Not enough.
Yeah.
represent.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very few. I guess
Very
more are
few.
coming up. But when I
Yeah.
I
was
This
in
is great.
understand.
school and
Yeah.
yeah.
I think it's
Yeah.
great that theater for young audiences gripped me too in after
Mm.
undergrad. So I
Same.
understand. And I was doing African folk tales to
Hmm.
students in Forsyth County, North Carolina, where I went to school.
Hmm.
And
The Chapel Hill program is so good too.
oh, I was at School of the Arts in Winston.
Oh,
But
amazing.
yeah,
That's
but we
great.
were out in the classroom and I have loved it. And I started doing
Mm.
it, like you, we
Yeah.
have lots of intersectionality. That's the
Oh,
word
yeah.
of the,
My first tours
Absolutely.
were children's theater tours. We have
Oh,
so much in
amazing.
common.
we
Yeah.
Amazing.
do.
Yeah, I
Yes.
totally come from the musical theater world. I'm like very, very slowly dipping my toes back in right now because it's a little bit of a toxic space.
Oh,
Yeah, it
honey.
sure is.
Yes, it is.
Sure is.
So I'm being very, very cautious about moving into it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was kind of my background. And I went off to grad school and I did a year in London and like did some weird performance art stuff, which you can see kind of kernels of in my work.
Yeah.
In like the in your faceness of it. And I was like homesick and watching a lot of YouTube, and I was like, okay, this is a space where there are a lot of kids and there's a lot of educational content, and there's a lot of queer people there. And so I was just kind of like, what if I made like an educational preschool show for kids about queer stuff? Like, what does gay mean? And I remember
idea.
and I remember Googling what does gay mean one night to be like, okay, what could this project look like? And the only things that came up were like school resources and like a dictionary definition that like had the derogatory term in the definition,
Oh my
and
God.
like a couple of things for like parents and educators, but there really wasn't anything to like directly answer that question for young people.
Yeah.
And so when I came back to the States, I like, in the traditional like theater of it all, like grabbed a couple of friends and found a free space that I could use and someone who had a camera and like sort of knew how to work it. And we shot the pilot episode, and it all just kind of snowballed from there. And now we've had like,
Amazing.
4 seasons of episodes, over 50 videos. It ran from 2016 through 2019, and still really has a life. I mean,
Yeah.
the hundreds of thousands of views every Pride. I feel like it's become even more relevant than when I was initially doing it. I tour a show whenever I get gigs at schools and libraries. That's kind of how it came to be.
That's
Wow.
man. What was your first episode? What was it about?
I think we actually started with unicorns are queer horses. So I wanted to do kind of like a queer theory for preschool as a way to kind of like start it off. I mean, I had queer in the title. And so I was like, all right, we're going to have to establish what that means because it's the name of the series. And I also wanted to really couch the entire series in like a philosophy and values of like, we're talking about queerness, and that means like the LGBT community. That means we're talking about gender in like trans and non-binary ways and queer ways. We're talking about queerness as difference, as a special kind of difference. We're talking about like queer from really the academic use of the term, and how do we simplify that in a way that kids can access it and understand it. And I wanted that to really be a through line for the full series. So I started with that video, and then we went to the what is gay, which is the more like SEO Google friendly
Yeah.
episode. Yeah.
It's
Wow.
awesome. Like
It's so great.
Like it's great for all kids. And I'm thinking mainly of like my daughter. She's almost 9. She has gay moms, and feels very much a part of the queer community. And so for her to be able to watch things like this and see her family represented and talked about as this amazing community, and to be able to share it with friends so they can learn, I just like, what a
Hats off to you.
hats
That's
off.
amazing.
And then also, why isn't it bigger? That's what I want. I mean, it's huge.
Yeah.
But why the fuck isn't this even bigger? Like the kind of things that E and I hear all the times when we talk to TV executives about the shows that we're shopping that are spinoffs of our show. It's always, it's just so niche. Our audience isn't ready for this yet. And
yeah.
Go ahead.
And I think, no, I'm agreeing with you completely. I'm so passionate about it. I apologize for interrupting. We're not niche. We're actually more the norm than the non-queers, because we don't shun people regardless of your gender identity, your sexual, why can't I think of the word, Lord Jesus, we just don't shun. We are an open door community, and it's beautiful and wonderful. And I think that your programming makes me realize that all the kids who have questions and are just curious, they're all in so we got all the kids in the queer family. Absolutely.
My hot take is that all kids are queer, actually.
I think so.
Yes, me too.
Listen, Lindz, I have this theory that everybody's actually queer. They just don't know it yet.
They just
Everybody
don't know.
has. It's like that song in Avenue
Everybody's
Q.
a little queer.
Everybody's a little bit queer. Everybody's got a little bit of queerness in them. You just have to find it. You got to find your queer. Because this is the best way to be. Don't we all know this? Come on now.
Oh yeah.
Right. You can be true to yourself and not listen to other people's idea of who you're supposed to be. Speaking of which, you mentioned that you are non-binary and trans. I am as well. I would love to hear about your journey and when it started
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't come out as non-binary until I was in my mid-20s, so like 25-ish, and I was actually well into doing queer kid stuff. I started the web series using she, her pronouns and Lindsay as my full name, and it was something I really discovered kind of through doing the web series and embedding
Doing the work.
myself, doing
Right.
the work, but also like as I was doing the work and embedding myself more in activist communities and deeper into queer culture. I started, I'm sure a lot of people read Autostraddle in this
Yep.
audience. And I went to, they used to do a camp called A Camp, and I went to one of them where it was just
Mm,
like, a bunch of queers in the woods for a couple of days.
as you
And I
do.
went, exactly. And it was one of the first places where I'd ever been where they then pronouns were like just normalized around me. And I was
Mhm.
just in a space where that was like not even a second thought.
Mm.
And it sort of like clicked for me. I was like, oh, that's maybe something that could feel good for me. And I started like asking my girlfriend at the time, now wife, to use they them pronouns for me. And it just kind of stuck.
Uh-huh.
And like, I mean, this is the way I think about coming out is that like I just stopped lying and started to just live in my truth and authenticity, and people kind of followed me and figured it out. Um, so I came out as non-binary when I was about 25, 26, in the
Well,
middle of queer kid stuff.
Lynn,
And
you look like that. You're not far from that age now. So,
I'm
I mean,
31.
okay. Thank you for giving some
Yes.
context. I didn't mean to out you about your
No, no,
age.
no.
I
You're
just,
fine.
okay, great.
And a lovely
Yes,
young
no.
face.
Well, thank you. Um, I moisturize. Um,
It's important. It's important.
um, yeah, and so I was kind of going through that and figuring it out, and I actually ended up writing a non-binary coming out arc into queer kid stuff.
Yeah,
So
you
if you
did.
look in like it's like at the third or fourth season, one of the it's kind of like toward the later end of it. But I wrote like a 3-episode arc of like me. I like did a coming out episode where I came out to Teddy as non-binary. And it's really cool that that like lives on the internet that I did that for myself. But
Yeah.
yeah, so that happened, and then I didn't identify as trans at the time, and that's something that's come up over the last couple of years of like figuring out that I'm a part of the trans community and like where I sit in my non-binariness and
Mhm.
transness feeling right for me too. And that sort of started happening the last few years. It's been an interesting Saturn return for me.
Yes, you are in the ending of your Saturn return.
I'm in the end, thank
You're
goodness.
oh gosh, let me tell you something. So much better. So the late 30s are kind of but once you cross over to the other side, the 40 side, it's
So
just
close.
party. You're not close, but it's all right. You'll
I'm
get
close
there.
to being out of my Saturn return is what I'm
Yes.
excited about.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely.
but
Is
and then I got top surgery last January, and that was kind of now it's kind of been a year of me like living in my body in a gender euphoric way like all the time for the first time in my life. So I've
Oh,
just been like learning a lot about myself now that I don't have that like dysphoria weight on me. So yeah, that's kind of been my gender journey. I'm
that's
still,
amazing.
on it in a
how
lot of ways, but
how did your family and friends, and is it still a work in progress? Because it seems like it's been a long time for you. Well, relative to my journey started maybe a year ago, if that.
mm,
So I'm
well,
still,
welcome to the
Yeah.
club.
thank you. I've
Anytime.
always been here. I just didn't know I was.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
He always leans in a little bit closer when we do these interviews because,
Mm,
this is
I'm
this
learning.
journey is,
yeah,
and I'm learning this journey is a journey.
Oof.
yeah, and like I've been out for 6-ish years now, and like I'm still on it,
Yeah.
like there's still a lot that I'm learning, and like listening to other trans people and like just being embedded in the space. It's so important to like
And it's
learn for
not about
yourself.
how you look. You know what
No,
I mean?
no,
That's
not
the
at
thing
all.
that I get a lot of grief about
Hmm.
from outside people, my friends and family. It's not about how you look. It's
Hmm.
about how you are
Yeah.
in yourself.
Hmm.
And I think that's
Exactly.
hard for people sometimes. I don't know why, but
Well, I think it has so much to do with like the ways that gender is embedded in everything we do, and like
yes,
Mm.
how intensely we are taught from, I mean, in utero, right?
absolutely.
Like about like the gender binary and like really rigid structures around gender and gender roles and stereotypes
Yeah,
in our world, and it takes a lifetime to deconstruct them,
it
Mhm.
and
does.
not even. And I think and so much of it has to do with, that lens on perception of our bodies and how we express our gender. It's really, really complicated. And I
It's
mean,
so
for my
complicated.
family's journey, I mean, it's been, a learning process, I think, for everyone. My parents still aren't awesome about my pronouns all the time. I've found that like my sisters are really incredible advocates for me and have been
Mm.
really, really helpful in that way. For our wedding, my sister sent out a little email to my family that was actually really, really wonderful. Where she kind of talked about how she like had to shift her perspective of like how she thought of me throughout my entire life, and like her understanding that like I have always been non-binary.
Mm.
And she pulled an image of me like as a kid and was like, that's a non-binary child.
Huh.
And like it's so obvious when you would look at those photos, and I think that that is what maybe helped my parents especially like really think about it and shift their view of my gender from like, okay, going from like being a woman to now being non-binary. Like that's not the actual narrative, right? I've
Mhm.
always been non-binary. I was just incorrectly identified as a woman for most of my life.
Yes, that's
Oh.
that makes me think of the conversation that we had with Jessie Hempel. She wrote the family outing. It's a new book, and
Hmm.
she tells a story about how basically everybody in her family ended up coming out at some
Mhm.
point. And her brother, she has a trans brother,
Mhm.
and she says she really grappled with writing him in and
Mhm.
had a conversation with him like, well, how do I talk about you as a baby as opposed to as you are now? And she had this huge reckoning with herself and was like so overwhelmed with how hard it was for her to figure out that, oh yeah, he and her brother just said in the end, he said something like, I've always been me. It's just
Mhm.
me. Why can't you
Yeah.
just call me me? And that, and
Yeah.
how it was like a huge awakening to her. And it was eye opening that she had such a difficult time figuring that out, even
Mhm.
Yeah.
though she's super supportive and loving of her brother and his journey and all this stuff. But it's interesting, and it's layered, and it's deep, and
Very.
there's
I mean,
so
that's true
much
for
to
any
this.
human identity too, though, right?
True.
Right.
We
But
just
I
don't
think
think about
it's
it in that way.
absolutely. I believe that we're all getting to the point where we're trying to, we will bust out of these confines of
Mm.
all of these labels
Mhm.
because there's so much intersectionality and it's just
Yeah.
at some point we just have to realize we're all the same race, we're all the same species. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
and that's what means everything.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And when the
Well,
aliens come, we're going to be happy. We're all going to rally, and it's not going to be all these different groups. I
yes.
don't believe in those aliens, by the way. I have a friend who always talks about the aliens
Oh,
coming.
jeez.
Oh, I
Here we
mean,
go.
I don't think we're alone in this universe, but
I
that's a
agree.
Oh,
whole other conversation.
that's a whole nother. You're gonna have to start a podcast about that because that's a whole
Oh God,
can
no.
of worms. But I think that it's really important, and shows like yours, Linz, are super important because I
Mm.
think about my son who's 5, and despite the fact that we are trying to raise both of our kids without this gender binary, without them thinking that boys things are boys things and girls things are girls things, and
Mhm.
trying to be like open with our language with them and open with all this stuff, he seems to just, it's ingrained in him that he is very binary boy,
Mhm.
and he only likes blue, and it's like this
Yeah.
thing that I'm constantly trying to chip away at,
Mm.
and it's hard, and I don't know how. And he'll even say, I don't like girls. I'm like, I'm a girl. Where you live with only girls, what are you talking about? Like, what did but we're chipping away at it. And so
Mhm.
that's why it's super important for me to be able to like put this on and say, look, check this out. Look at
Mhm.
this amazing show that's created for you to
Mhm.
watch, and that you're going to be entertained by and learn a lot as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So
I mean, and so I wrote this parenting book that's like about queer and gender affirming kind of like parenting, child rearing, education strategies. And for me, it's like not even about just like chipping away at like gender binary rigid roles and stuff like that. For me, it's about just like exposure to other options and
mm,
like showing people like what it is about like queerness and gender identity are just like this vast part of like human experience and identity, and there's just been so much in the way of being able to communicate that it's all it is about kids is just showing them like, okay, this is all like the potential that you could be in the world, and like it's your job to explore and discover things about yourselves and figure out where you fit that has nothing to do with what gender you were assigned at birth by a doctor based on your
Yes.
genitalia, right?
Right. I
Right.
absolutely
I could
love it.
listen to you all
I know.
day. And one of the reasons you have a great sound, but your mic, it's delicious. I'm sorry, we have so many technical
We've been
challenges.
having technical
gosh, I'm
Yeah.
sure.
lately.
And that mic is it's amazing. I'm sorry,
wonderful.
that's so off topic. You
It's
sound so
okay. It's very
I'm like,
inside baseball podcast.
It's perfect. It's beautiful. But I want to know, you had this beautiful run and the show is still popular. Why'd you stop creating it? What happened there?
A lot of different reasons. I moved states, so I no longer had access to the free studio where I filmed it. And my crew, that was just a bunch of wonderful queer friends who helped me make it possible.
Yes.
It was expensive, and YouTube sucks. And
In what way? Like, did you
I went
get
through just so much harassment. And like
I was gonna ask about this. Yeah.
yeah, it was really, really bad. And this was before COPA smacked YouTube on the hand. And I mean I didn't have any comments enabled, and now you are not allowed to on kids content. But that was something that YouTube figured out. But it was really bad, and it took a huge toll on my mental health. And I'm currently suing YouTube.
Yeah, you are.
Because of that.
Yeah, you are.
And yeah, I'm like working through the trauma I have around it, and
That
it was just
sucks.
yeah, it really did suck because it's something, and I'm gonna get emotional about this, but like queer kid stuff is something that I love so dearly. It has given me so much. I love that I gave that to the world, and I would love nothing more than to bring it back and to breathe new life into it. It sucks that it's on YouTube, but that is the place where it has had a life and has had an audience, and I want it to always be a free and publicly available resource, because I think it is necessary for it to be, while we don't have content like it otherwise. And so I will never take it down from YouTube unless I can find a different free platform that isn't as bad. But yeah,
we need like Rosie O'Donnell to create just a queer network, just a queer representational queer network for all queers, all things queer. Just somebody
look at us
the network that
brainstorming.
is safe for us.
We need one for kids content is the thing, because Reverie is actually a streaming platform, an app that is LGBT content exclusively. They're
I hope we're on that. I gotta check it out.
Wait, I'm taking notes.
Reverie, REVRY, I think. They've been around for a minute. They're a really, really great organization. But they don't really have kids content. This is the thing, is that like kids content generally gets really siloed from the rest of the entertainment world, and then even more so when it's queer, because queerness and kids are just so stigmatized.
Yes.
And it's we're recording this the Monday after the Colorado Springs shooting, and there's been a lot of headlines that have talked about the fact that they had scheduled an all ages drag story hour, I believe that weekend or today or something like that.
It was supposed to be Sunday. So the shooting happened Saturday. It was supposed to be Sunday. That's what breaks my heart the most. Like that really cut to the core.
Yes.
Hardcore.
Yeah, it's tough. And I think that we're seeing, I mean, it's been pretty wild this last year, because all of the harassment that I got, I mean, I have 50 different spellings of the word pedophile on my block list on YouTube, right? And like groomer, like all those things. I mean, there was lots of like drink bleach, and people tweeted nooses at me and swastikas, and the anti-Semitism was
I'm
rough.
so sorry you had to go through that.
I appreciate that. But I bring it up. I don't love talking about it, but I bring it up because I'm seeing it. I've been out of kind of like that spotlight for a little bit, for mostly on purpose, to recover a little bit, but also to be able to like make things in my own space and establish my ground, because I wasn't totally ready for queer kid stuff to take off in the way it did at the time. It was ahead of its time, but it was also like ahead of me a lot. Like imagine the first project you do out of college with like your friends, like popping off like that. It was wild.
Yeah, that is wild.
But I'm talking about it because I'm seeing all this harassment that I got personally on like, 2016 through 2019, like now it's happening on a national stage. And it's really wild to see my YouTube comments play out in headlines. And that's what's happening right now. And it's really scary. And the last I did I don't do a ton of in-person events anymore, because of COVID and the pandemic. But also I'm starting to think about safety concerns, right? Like I did my last in-person gig was in October, in Las Vegas, and it was the first performance I'd ever had where there was a protest outside. And it was scary, and like my wife was very nervous about it, and I have a book coming out in May, and so I'm trying to figure out if I'm going to tour, and I don't know, with the political climate right now, it's scary. So
it really
I don't know.
is, and this shooting has really made me, because we've been planning on taking our kids to a drag brunch for fun. I have a friend who hosts one, and we were gonna do it, and all these, and like we don't go to the gay bars anymore because we're old moms. But I would be the fear there, it just instills this new fear in you, and I don't want to bring my kids anywhere near it, just in case, right? So it's fucked up, man. God, I hate the hate. Come on. But that's why representation matters, and that's why we have to keep doing this and normalizing this, and putting it out into the world, so that hopefully, and the children are the future, forgive my like corny thing to say.
No,
but
I agree with you. I think investing in
world.
queer and trans representation in children's media and in education is absolutely the way to change the world. Like, I think I don't think that that's hyperbolic either. I think that like that is actually the way to shift culture and make things different. Because I mean, look at Gen Z and how progressive and how involved and engaged they are, because they've, I mean, one, grown up in a world with an incredible amount of gun violence in schools, but also are so much more. So many of them identify as queer and trans, and it's because they have had resources that we didn't have when we were growing up, and a lot of that's due to people like us who are making that work happen. And I mean, I'm just like waiting for the day when like a teen or like early like Gen Z or someone comes up to me and is like, "You were my Mr. Rogers," and like that.
You are.
I mean, yes, that's kind of the vein that I'm trying to archetype that I'm trying to fulfill publicly.
We need a non-binary way of saying Mr. Rogers, though.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that this is the new Mr. Rogers thing gets thrown around a lot right now. To describe people. I was one of the first, but it doesn't matter. But I've also kind of been like, because like that's the persona that I put on, right? Like that's the queer kid stuff, like that's the character that I play. And I think a lot of like the journey after queer kid stuff has been like, okay, who am I outside of that character? Who am I outside of my work? How can I find that work-life balance? How can I hone in on like doing what I want and the stories that I want to tell in different spaces and different modes and different mediums? And I mean, everything that I do is mission based, right? Same. And that's the most important thing for me, and is what keeps me going.
I can really relate on that, and I can really also relate to how overwhelming it gets at times.
Oh my gosh,
how much it matters, and then how do you make sure that it gets out there in the right way? And
Yeah, and a lot of it's been like deconstructing the like capitalism of it all, right? Of like the hustle culture and like, okay, we don't need to be putting out something all the time, 24/7,
Can take a lesson from you,
52 weeks.
Linz.
No, but it's hard too. And I grew up in a family that, had really high expectations and like, gonna go to a good college and get good grades. And I've been figuring out my neurodivergence. And so like that's been a journey all on its own. And figuring out like, okay, I can still do the work, but I can also take care of myself at the same time. And like I don't have to, I have taken up a mantle for sure, and like use the skills that I have and like the intuition that I have and the want that I have to do this work and to be this person within my career. But I also like am still a human being, and at the end of the day, I have to be able to do this in a way that's sustainable and in a way where like I can still take care of myself and function. And that has been a huge learning curve. And like
I
it's
gotta
hard.
say, I'm so happy to hear that your generation is focusing on self-care. As a Gen Xer, it was not the it was not the push. And especially in the Black community, it was you better be a Claire Huxtable. You know what I mean?
Oh,
That's our
yeah.
model. And to work like that and to still take care of a family and to still look good. And it's incredible the pressure that our generation Generation X has had, but it's so great to see your generation and the Gen Zs say, wait a minute, do you really have to keep going? Do you only need to get by on 4 hours of sleep? Maybe you should, talk to a mental health professional. And I know that we laid some of the ground rules for that, but I feel like y'all took it and just, I don't know why I'm running, but but just ran with it. And the work that you're doing is so important. And I know it could be scary, but you got a squad. You know what I mean? You got a squad. So in us, most definitely, but in our community, we squad up. So when you do travel, making sure that you have us around you. And because our network is deep, between the HRC, between GLAD, yes, our podcast,
LGBTQ task force.
the there's so many places.
We're a community, and we will rally
and we will
around.
keep each other safe because you shouldn't be scared. I've been thinking about that a lot too, about going in public and doing things, and it's a lot. Because I'm wondering, are they getting at me because I'm Black? Is it because I'm queer? Is it like, what is it? It's a lot.
There's some intersectionalities in there that cross.
Yeah,
gosh,
absolutely.
Yeah,
just keep doing the good work. It's really
thanks.
Well, so
it's necessary.
Let's segue to what are you doing now? What's you're still doing this work just in a different way. What are you up to?
Yeah, lots of different ways. And queer kid stuff is still very much alive. We've got like a Patreon, and we put out educational resources, and I again do those like performances across the country and virtually. Like queer kid stuff is still alive and well in me and in Teddy, right?
Yes.
So but outside of that, so yeah, I run it as a business. And we do a lot of cool projects. We had this like letter writing project where we commission queer and trans grown-ups to write letters to queer and trans kids. It's called Dear Queer Kid. It's just like a beautiful project. We're working on connecting with more queer and trans educators. We just threw like a mini conference, so we're doing a lot of work kind of like under that brand. Otherwise, I'm now an author. I wrote a book. It's coming out in late May. So that's pretty wild. That's what kind of my podcast is an extension of. It's called Rainbow Parenting. So I'm doing that. I'm doing a lot of work in the TV film space. I've been pitching shows and writing some scripts, and I can't really talk about most of it.
That's a good thing, though. That means it's popping. Yes.
Yeah. So I worked on the thing that is out is that I worked on the Blues Clues and You Pride Parade video that like went super viral a couple prides ago.
Yeah, Lynz. Go ahead.
That was pretty cool. that was pretty awesome. I wrote some stuff for their digital team, and if anyone is in Canada, I wrote on the Faye and Fluffy show, which was awesome. It's basically like Drag Story Hour, but in a children's like preschool show. It's really only in Canada right now, unfortunately. But Canadians get to
better than us.
Canadians get to enjoy that. I had a
ahead,
great time.
Canadians.
I know, right? I had a great time writing that.
Well,
yeah, so I'm doing a lot.
And what is your book? It's describe what the book is and what people will read.
Yeah, totally. So it's called Rainbow Parenting. It's your guide to raising queer kids and their allies. So it's really like a parenting philosophy book around how to raise kids in a queer and gender affirming way when you don't know how. Because I mean, and that's for straight and like ally and cis ally parents for sure, but it's also for queer families who we all grew up in a cis heteronormative world, and like how do we parent when that's the only thing we know? How do we raise kids? And it goes through the first kind of part of the book is like really deconstructing like this is what like discrimination against kids is, childism. This is these are the stigmas that we hold around queerness and children and why this is like such like a hot button topic. So really getting in there and like getting comfortable with being vulnerable and like understanding that like we make mistakes in this work and it's just about being transparent and open and honest with young people. And then it kind of goes into like an age based kind of guide through how to talk about sexuality, gender, identity, activism, social justice, intersectional identities, all of that kind of like as your kids grow older. So in kind of infancy, then into pre-K, and then kindergarten, etc.
So first you get the If These Ovaries Could Talk book, and you learn how to make your baby.
Yeah.
Then you read Linds's, and you learn how to parent them so that we're doing a rock star freaking job creating these amazing human beings who are going to go out there and change the freaking world.
Yeah, that's the idea.
Sounds like a good plan.
I think it's a perfect plan. When does this book come out?
It comes out May 30th.
Okay, we have some time.
We have got a little time.
You know, you're going to let us know when people can pre-order it.
It's pre-orderable right now.
You can pre-order it right now.
Where can we pre-order it? I'm about
anywhere
to type
you get your books. My personal preference is bookshop.org. I love them over there. But you can get it wherever you like getting your books.
Go to your local bookstore and pre-order that jam.
Exactly.
Go do that. Go to your library and tell them they need to pre-order.
Request it at your library, please.
Do it all. And then do it also for my book, please. Thank you so much.
Yes. My idea is that like this is a perfect baby shower book.
Yes. That's this is a perfect little duo of baby shower book right there. Or wedding book. It's perfect wedding and baby shower book. Look at that. Booyah. We're creating whole packages.
I have some queer weddings come up. You two just did it. I am done. Thank you. I'm getting 2 of those books. The wedding is in June. Hey.
And then also, and then get a subscription to Our Shelves for your kids when they're grown, because Our Shelves is great too. Look, we got it all figured out for you. You don't even have to go anywhere else except listen to this podcast and do all the steps we've just laid out.
Yes, and the queers are going to be okay. We're going to be okay.
I think
absolutely.
We're changing the world. We're getting there. We're getting there one teeny tiny step at a time, and then a couple steps backward. But we're making progress.
Absolutely,
that's the idea.
And so, okay, so it wouldn't be If These Ovaries Could Talk, the Queer Families podcast, if we didn't
ask
about
what your sign is.
Oh God, here we go with the sign.
What sign are you?
Needs to know your sign.
Well, I'm a Scorpio.
Yes, my son. Happy birthday!
I had a feeling. Happy birthday! Yes,
thank you.
When's your birthday?
It's October 30th.
Congrats! Happy birthday!
Thank you. Scorpio sun, Leo moon, Aquarius rising. I got a lot of fixed energy.
Nice. That's a good blend.
I think so. It's a little intense sometimes, but we get through.
That's where that fire is. That's why you keep creating all this good stuff.
It's stubborn to a fault.
And you have alluded to your wife. We know you have a wife.
Yes, I do.
Have y'all had the possible baby making chat, and what have you discussed in regards
if
to
you're
that?
comfortable talking about it?
Yeah. No, I'm comfortable. I'm trying to like figure out how much I've like told the rest of my family versus how much I'm going to be telling the great public of your podcast, but it's okay.
You heard it here first, folks.
Exactly.
Exclusive.
I'm like, I don't think my parents are gonna I don't think they're gonna listen to this podcast. Who knows?
Probably not.
Who knows?
I mean, the whole world listens. Didn't you know
Yeah.
that, Linz?
Oh, yeah, obviously. Yeah, so we've definitely have had conversations. I mean, kids have been part of the conversation for a long time. I definitely want kids, and my wife does. I mean, it's just, it's not quite as easy as some of the
No.
heterosexuals.
We got a lot of decisions to make before. We talk about this
Yes.
all the time. The
Oh my
intentionality
gosh.
that you have to put into these families and the decisions you have to make before you even get to the point where you're starting the process
Oh my gosh.
Absolutely.
is a whole
Absolutely.
thing in and
You
of
should probably
itself.
Totally.
listen to the first 200, 190 episodes of this show because
Oh
there you
gosh,
go.
yeah.
If you got a question or a need or
I
understanding,
know, I know.
yeah,
Yeah, so we've been having conversations, I want to say like almost over like the last year or so
Mhm.
of like how we want to go about it and like what the thought process is. I think like the first part of the conversation was like who's going to carry, and I am like not totally at a place in my gender journey where like that feels comfortable for me. It's also like not necessarily something I've like been really wanting to do in my life. And I feel like people have strong opinions about wanting to be pregnant. I feel like this is like people there are some people who like really want like that to be an experience that they have. And
Yes.
I've never really felt that, and I think my wife really wants to.
That's
So
the
she
best. That's
yeah.
a great scenario because when you have
Mhm.
a couple where one really wants it and the other one's like, yeah, not so much, that's
Mhm.
an easy decision made right there,
yep,
at least
absolutely.
in the
Yeah.
moment. You never
And
know what things could change for the
exactly. And I
future.
could definitely foresee in the future, like that being something I'd be open to. I mean, the other consideration is like, I'm someone who is a public figure and like is whatever I do to my body, I mean, is probably going to be public in some way, shape, or form.
Hmm.
And trans pregnancy is something that's really difficult in like public
Hmm.
world.
Hmm.
So that's like also a consideration I'm having.
Mm.
But yeah, that's something I maybe will do in the future. I have donated my eggs before
Oh,
though.
you have?
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
Well, we're gonna
twice.
have to get into that. We're gonna have to get into that.
Yeah.
Let's.
So
We want to know about that, but
yeah, yeah, yeah.
tell us just where you're at with this, and then let's segue to
Mm-hmm.
that. I didn't even know that. I love
Yeah,
it when we
yeah,
learn this new stuff.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
Oh my
yeah,
god.
yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
so we can talk about that in a second. But yeah, so my wife and I have been having, so she's probably going to carry. She has PCOS, so that's something
Mm.
like she's been trying to figure out and understand better about her body. And we had like a conversation about like known versus unknown donor.
Hmm.
That was like a big thing that it still feels pretty overwhelming to me.
Yeah.
But I think we're probably going to go with an unknown donor.
Hmm.
And so we're looking at sperm banks
Hmm.
and trying. The biggest thing is like budgeting and saving right now.
Yep.
It's expensive to get the
We have
sperms.
a discount code OCT
Ooh,
California Cryobank.
ooh, okay.
OCT.
We might go
Yeah.
with Seattle, but who knows?
Okay.
And
We're
can I
not.
just jump in and
Mhm.
say PCOS is something that I had.
Mm,
And though I didn't get to, give birth, it did
mhm.
clear up through acupuncture.
Oh,
Acupuncture
interesting.
and Western medicine, the metformin.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to, I don't,
Yeah,
yeah. But
yeah,
the
yeah.
acupuncture did it, it
Mm,
gentilized. This is a word that I made, gentilized.
I love
It
it.
We do that a lot.
gentilized
We make a lot of words up.
Hmm.
the drug, and it moved things along a lot faster.
Fascinating. She has done acupuncture for her chronic pain,
Mm.
but I didn't know that it was a
Oh,
thing for
fertility
PCOS.
acupuncture is a big thing.
Fascinating. I will
Yeah.
Yeah.
pass that message along.
I
Yes.
took fertility
Queers helping
acupuncture
queers,
as
honey.
well.
That's what it's about.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Um,
But yeah, so that's we're starting to like talk to midwives, and my wife's like doing some blood work stuff, and yeah, we're really just kind of like saving up so we can start probably in like the late summer after my book comes out and like
uh-huh.
the nuttiness of June happens, and when things are hopefully like a little more chill.
Yeah,
But
it's
who
never
It's
chill
knows?
never
enough.
chill.
Yeah.
This is the one. Listen, my mother is not one of those moms that really gives advice. She just, oh, I don't know. What do you think about that? That's usually Mama Sue's MO. But the one piece of advice my mother gave me was when we were grappling, like, do we start? Do we do it? I don't know. We have this going on.
Mhm.
My mother said, it's never the right time. Either you
Mm,
do it or you don't. It is never the right time. And it's never going to be the right time. It really isn't
never.
because
Yeah,
you lose
totally.
all control when it comes to children. There's no control.
All
This
of
is
it.
your first lesson in life is there's no control. You think you have
Yeah.
things under control, but you really don't. And you really learn that when you start making them babies and
Yeah. And I'm around kids a lot. I teach early
Right.
childhood music and I nanny and I'm around kids a lot for queer kids stuff. And so yeah, the chaos of young people is I'm very like in and out of it right now, and I can choose when
Yeah.
that's a part of my life.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're trying to make that a thing. So yeah, that's where
super
we're at with the
exciting.
journey.
Well, we have to have you back.
Yeah, I'll let you know
Absolutely.
how it goes.
when it's all coming together and we're making decisions and
Yeah, I really
because
feel like I'm gonna
yeah.
regret having written a parenting book once I'm
No.
a parent.
No,
No,
you know
it's
what?
going to put you to the test, though.
You
Yeah.
It
have this
will.
area of expertise when it comes to this stuff, and we want your knowledge when it comes to queer kid stuff and how to talk to our kids about it all.
Oh, well, I appreciate that.
I think you just do a beautiful job. I really
Yeah,
do.
absolutely.
Thank you.
And now we need to know about the egg donation, because
Yeah.
where did that come from? And walk us through that. And
Yeah,
kudos
totally.
to you. Good job.
Thanks. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's something, I mean, I went freelance and was pretty broke and reached out to when I was living in New York and did it through actually I probably shouldn't say where I did it through. But it was a fertility clinic in New York that's very reputable, and they were great. They just kind of like they really liked me, and I passed all the genetic testing, and I have
Sorry, my dog.
I'm like one of like probably a handful of Ashkenazi Jews who doesn't have is in the carrier for
Oh.
Tay-Sachs. And I did it twice. I went
Wow.
so yeah, basically I went through like the IVF process. And my body was like pretty fine with it. I was very bloated. And went through the procedure, and what was wild is the second time that I did it, I wasn't living in New York anymore, so I was kind of like doing it long distance, which was weird. But when I was in New York and like doing the actual like when you're in like the last like when you're doing the actual cycle, you have to like go in for checkups like every couple of days, and it's a very intensive process. It was March 2020.
Wow.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Timing.
So it was like pretty much the week that everything started shutting down. And I remember, so I had to go on the subway and get to the fertility clinic like every other day for these checkups. And I remember every time I went, there would be less and less people in the waiting room.
God.
The hand sanitizer started coming up. People started sitting like a seat away from each other. People started wearing masks. It was just, it was really wild.
Yeah,
And I think I was one of the last people who did a donation that year.
Do you know, do they tell you where your eggs go, or if do they let you know if any children were born from an
No,
egg?
so the clinic that I did it through is completely anonymous.
Okay.
And that wasn't necessarily my choice. That's just like how this particular clinic does it, is that it's blind on both sides. So I have no idea who the parents are. And
That's crazy, because the donors, the men, people
Sperm
who
donors.
the sperm
Mhm.
donors can know.
Oh, I didn't know that. But yeah, I think it's just I don't think that that's true for everyone. I think that that's specific to this clinic.
And also, this
Um,
was a couple years ago. Things have changed a
Rapidly.
lot
You're
even in the
right.
past 2 years.
Yeah.
And I know that our sperm donor probably, I think, knows how many offspring were created, but I don't know if he knows who the families are and all the different demographics
Yeah.
of everything.
So I have no idea if I have biological children.
Wow.
I've donated twice, so that's more of a chance that it took and worked. But I really don't know. The only way I would know is if I did 23andMe and they also did 23andMe.
Which could end up happening in the future. You never know, right?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that would be the reason why I would do one of those services.
To find out.
Yeah, when maybe like in 16 years.
Yeah. What a good thing you did.
That's
What
amazing.
a beautiful thing.
Thanks.
You're an awesome human being. It's just
I
I feel
know.
like we'll never have enough time.
I know. I wonder if you
to be
could
fair, I
see-
did need the money at the time, and also I wanted to work up the karma a little bit. I don't want to. Yeah,
You gave somebody a shot at having a kid that possibly couldn't have had a kid, and that's
Yeah.
just a beautiful fucking thing. And I had to say "fuck" in there just to like
yeah.
really
It
nail
turns out
down the
that I'm
point.
incredibly fertile.
That's amazing. Well, maybe so. This is the beauty of having two folks with uteri
Mhm.
who are creating a baby, because you're super fertile, just in case. Just in
Yeah.
case.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
can use
yeah.
and you don't have to carry. Reciprocal IVF
Yeah, we've
is
talked
a
about
viable
that.
option.
We've definitely talked about that as an option in the future for sure. Because we've talked about like wanting my wife to carry and like to use her egg for the first child and potentially use my egg for the second child. Whether or not I carry would probably be a monetary thing.
Right.
Because I'm assuming that that's a lot more expensive.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah. So like money is like the thing, but
Well, hopefully
yeah.
insurances even come a longer way for us queer folk.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And
I think my wife's job just started doing a fertility stipend.
Okay.
So yeah, we're getting
baby
there.
steps.
Yeah,
Baby
exactly.
steps.
Literally.
Baby steps to baby steps.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Woo, look at that. Talking about baby steps to baby steps. I love it.
Mhm.
It's just been such a pleasure to talk to you, Lindz. And like E said, I really do feel like we could talk forever. And actually, we need to like hang out and like just really.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't wait to show my kids that I'm tuning them into queer kids stuff like ASAP.
Great.
We have a flight coming up tonight that I might even just be like, "Here you go," to my 5-year-old. You get to watch this today.
But it comes better from other people. So probably have somebody
I
else
know.
refer it, because
Yeah, 'cause he
with
won't
me, I
watch it
know
if
my
I-
son won't
yeah.
watch it if I say watch it.
Right. There's that. There's
Yeah.
that. But we're just so glad you're out there and you're doing the work and pushing through it, even with all of the terrible rhetoric you've gotten in the shit. And we're here for you. We're here for you.
Absolutely.
And
We got
are
your back.
community.
Appreciate
And we
it.
are here to uplift this amazing, amazing stuff you're doing. We
Yes.
love it. Absolutely. And we can't wait for you to come back and tell us about your baby making journey.
Oh my gosh.
Oh,
absolutely.
yes. And you can bring your wife maybe at the time if she's
Ooh,
into
that'd be
it.
fun.
Yeah.
So fun.
We love wives.
All right. So everybody, tell everybody all the places they can find you and where to get. We already talked about the book, but just say it again, just for shits and giggles.
Yeah, totally. I am at Lindz Amer, LINDZAMER on all social platforms. You can also follow my work at Queer Kid Stuff. One kid, Queer Kid Stuff. People get that wrong sometimes.
Yeah.
I wrote a book called Rainbow Parenting. You can pre-order it now. It's going to be out May 30th of 2023. I also host a podcast that's an extension of that book called Rainbow Parenting. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts. And I think those are all the places.
Awesome.
Love it. Go check out Lindz. Hit like, do all the stuff. All the stuff we make you guys do for us. Now y'all have to do it for Lindz too. It's
absolutely.
It's community.
Exactly.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lindz.
Well, thank you for having me. This was lovely.
Love you.
Yes. Yes.